The Irregulars landed on Netflix on the 26th of March and was created by Tom Bidwell. And it's basically a teenage drama stroke paranormal thriller investigation kind of thing based on the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So we're looking at sort of Sherlock Holmes and Watson here, which I was happily surprised. I didn't watch any trailers for this. I've mentioned in a few other videos I'm staying away from the trailers to get completely surprised by this. So I was like, okay, hang on, Baker Street? What the hell? And after the first episode, you basically get to meet Watson. So the formula for this is nothing new, I have to say. It is a sort of monster of the week episode with an overarching storyline and follows, like I mentioned, the Irregulars, who are a, I suppose, misfit group of basically poor people who are hired by Watson to go and investigate certain paranormal activities, and these things ramp up as we get towards the end of the first season. There are 8 episodes, they range from 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and I did see some people moaning online about where did the Irregulars come from? Well, they came from the original books. There were 3 or 4 books actually that featured the characters that were called the Irregulars, though they were only boys, basically. They were described, I think, as being as sharp as a pin, or at least the leader of the Irregulars was. So in this, they've changed that slightly, which is, to me, a good thing. Of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's books are kind of racist in a lot of ways, but that was, the times that they were written in. I'm not even going to describe how he describes the ethnicities of the street kids. Anyway, I'll tell you about why it's actually worth watching now. As I mentioned, The Irregulars follows the group of misfit kids, well, teenagers, I suppose, in this. I think one of them's just turned 17, and their plight, being alive in a world that is not so nice to people who have no money. Only this time, we have one of the characters who suddenly starts having these nightmares and basically developing powers. And I thought that she would be the main character in this, and I suppose she does get a lot of screen time compared to some of the others, but we have quite a range of people that we do follow. And unfortunately, only 1 or 2 of them really get a decent amount of treatment. The aforementioned girl who has the dreams or has these special powers where she can touch demons and see how they got possessed, who is Jessie, played by Darcy Shaw. She's okay, not bad at all. She gets quite a bit of a backstory about her parentage, and you find out certain things that I'm not going to ruin here because of spoilers, etc. But she's basically, she's the main hub of what takes place is not because of her, but she's a, canary in a cage kind of story. Her sister, Beatrice, who is played superbly by Thadia Graham. Thadia Graham is a Chinese-born Irish actress. And I was a bit worried because when you watch these teen dramas, it's very easy for the characters to get obnoxious, at least the lead characters to get obnoxious. And she does a damn fine job of walking this line of a character, of B, between being the leader and being young and ignorant, but also being kind of kick-ass at the same time. So I think she was the strongest actor in this, but I think maybe because she was given quite a bit more content as far as the plot is concerned. She's followed by a couple of her people. There's about 6 of these guys. There's Spike, who is the glue that holds, not the glue, sorry, the bones that hold the gang together. He's kind of just there to make one-liner jokes, which are quite funny, granted, but he doesn't do much. He's kind of like the thief. So to send him into places first, and he's a person of colour that's represented in this, and I know people might go, why did you point it out? I'm pointing it out because the cast is very diverse. They have people of colour, they've got black people in it, they've got Asian people, they've got white people in it, and it's never mentioned that their ethnicity is never mentioned in this, and the reason I'm mentioning it is because it wasn't mentioned in this. Usually you get tensions between the white aristocrats and the so-called plebs that might be white, black, Irish, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. But in this they don't. You have a mixture of aristocrats that are of all colours, and the same with the peasants. There is a mixture of all races represented here, and it's never pointed out. So it's not like, oh, well, you can do more than I can because of your background. And I like that. I thought that was quite nice. Anyway, so as I mentioned, you've got Spike. He's kind of there for comic relief and to hold them together, the heart of the group. I mentioned B, who is a kick-ass character. She's quite hardcore. We've got Beatrice as well, Jessie, who is, like I say, this quite powerful character, but spends most of the time crying, sadly. We've got Leo, who's a prince. He suffers from haemophilia, so you would expect him to be quite sick, and he's always walking around holding his side. But there's a scene where he takes his top off when he has a romantic encounter, and the guy's ripped. It's like, dude, you are not haemophiliac, for God's sake. I want a body like yours. So it was a little bit like, really, like a bit silly, I suppose. I suppose it's a suspension of disbelief, but still, it was something that they could have done a little bit better with, because it was such a removing from a character who's quite literally always walking around holding himself like this because he's ill. And it's like, no, you're not. You look like you could take on Bruce Lee kind of story. Speaking of taking on Bruce Lee and hard people, we then have Billy, who's the oldest of the group of the Irregulars, and he's supposed to be the muscle in this group. He's supposed to be the hard guy, and they're all like, "Oh, but you're the muscles. You're the muscles." He doesn't fight anybody until like the 6th or 7th episode. And granted, he does kill someone, but that's because they hit their head on a rock, not because he rips their head off. So you're kind of like, why is this guy being told that he's a hardcore guy? And the whole way through, he literally hasn't beaten up anybody in the show. But they're all like, oh, you're the hardcore. Okay, granted, in the first episode, I think it's actually the opening scene, he's about to get into a ring a la Snatch, sort of top off, about to beat up this big guy. And I thought at first, when I realized that this was a supernatural show, that maybe he was a werewolf, and that maybe he would be able to rip this guy's spine out. But no, he wasn't. He would have just literally been killed, but he was doing it for his family, Vin Diesel. Basically, they're poor and they will do anything for money. That's basically why they start working for Watson, which leads me as a nice way into talking about Watson and Sherlock. This, to me, is the strongest thing in this show, which is kind of good and bad. It's bad because the main characters, as in the Irregulars, are supposed to be the best parts. But I thoroughly love this version of Watson, who's black, and Holmes, who's a drug addict, which is kind of true. He's always been a drug addict in the books, but this guy is proper broken. He doesn't do any deducing. His elementary, or telementary in this case, is completely bloody off. He's useless. And that's because he couldn't fix something, which makes sense. So 15 years ago, before this takes place, a whole thing happens. Not going to tell you what it is because obviously spoilers. And he's unable to save someone, and he's also unable to fix it. And so he goes into a downward spiral and basically just snaps, breaks, and is completely useless. The funny thing about the Wikipedia page is that it states here that the show was going to be about a group of teenagers, the Irregulars, who solve crimes for Sherlock, whilst Sherlock takes the glory or the fame or the accomplishments, which is very far from the truth. That doesn't happen in this. So I don't know who wrote the wiki. Fix it, please. But like I say, the relationship, the relationship between him and Watson is really interesting. It's something I haven't seen done before. I can imagine some people hating it and screaming, but I think it was brilliantly done, and explains a certain motivation to the characters. Now, on the flip side, I'm just having a look at the bad things here. I mentioned like the big tough guy, the big brawler boy, who's 17. What's his name again? Westford Billy. The acting wasn't great here, and he kind of stands there going like this, like he's just farted but accidentally shat himself, and he doesn't want anybody else to know, and he's hoping that they haven't found out. And he's like that in every scene. He's constantly just like this, which is not great, unfortunately. Again, I mentioned Spike earlier. He doesn't really have much of a role to play other than holding the group together, almost like a Sam Ganges, but with lesser agency kind of thing. We also have, like I say, Leo, he's the prince, basically. And he also wasn't, he's hitting all the notes here. I think the only person who really hit the notes, as I mentioned, was Tadia Graham, the actress that plays Beatrice. She was really good in this, as were Watson and Holmes. But the other cast members, I'm not sure if two of them are new. I know Jojo, who plays Billy, I can't even find his Wikipedia thing. And Mikhail David, who plays Spike, he doesn't seem to have a Wikipedia. So maybe these are sort of new people. So there were issues with the acting in certain scenes with the new cast, I'd say, new cast. There were also issues in the middle of the show, which seems to play quite a lot of series out there. It starts off strong, kind of like with a Monster of the Week for the first 3 or 4 episodes, and some of those are really great. There's one where they're on a manor and they can't get off. Every time they leave one path, they appear on another. And it was kind of like a Cluedo episode. It was funny, it was intriguing, mysterious, worked really well. But then suddenly you spiral down and go into this melodrama between the characters that was quite unnecessary, to be honest. A lot of the melodrama made no sense. One moment you've got Bee saying, don't worry to her sister who's having these nightmares. She has these nightmares, but she's also able to dive into the nightmares and learn more, but she's scared. And so she got the entire team, all the Irregulars going, don't worry, you don't have to do this. But then they turn on her in a blink of an eye and go, you're being a coward, think about us, blah, blah, blah. So there were some serious issues with plot here too, which was like, that really frustrated me because it was quite tight at the beginning and quite tight at the end. The ending wasn't too bad. I have to say I wasn't overly overwhelmed with it. It was a little bit like saw that coming mile away. And one of the big bads that gets sort of dealt with is dealt with so quickly and also in a way that I've seen in a couple of other series that I was a bit frustrated by that. But otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. It is a new take on Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson and the new cast of the Irregulars. I think we're getting a second season, just by looking at the rumours online. It looks like they're already shooting, but they haven't mentioned it, which they've done in a couple of other series too. Like, I think Umbrella Academy started filming before they mentioned it. So I'm hoping that we get a second season, because it is fun. And like I say, I want to see more Sherlock. I love this version of Sherlock. He is such an asshole. Yeah, he was just well acted, very well acted. So for me, this show gets a 7.5 out of 10. I look forward to seeing more of it. Oh, the sound is really well done. The special effects are not bad at all. And the background, the settings are very English, very sort of Jack the Ripper-esque. So yeah, I think you'll enjoy it if you like these kind of shows. Tell me what you think. Catch you guys later.